The Senate had their hearing today. And in that hearing, what they were discussing was the infrastructure bill. In the infrastructure bill, and why this is important to us in cryptocurrency, in that infrastructure bill was a bill to regulate crypto. So obviously, infrastructure, you can just tell by the name of it, it probably had nothing to do with cryptocurrency. And if that was your assumption, you're correct. The bill had nothing to do with crypto. Think of it as like a bit of a stimulus to just a general stimulus package, not one that you would be getting in your mail, not one that you would see, not the everyday person, more for businesses, highways, transportation, fixing potholes, that kind of thing. Larger scale stuff that needs to be done, military funding, healthcare, all this other stuff, not for the everyday person. And in that bill, they said, and actually, well, we've been needing to regulate cryptocurrency, so let's go ahead and just throw that in. So you've got all of these unrelated things in the bill, and then you've got the cryptocurrency portion that they just threw in there. Now, I will say I've wanted to go short right now, really, really bad, but stinking Ethereum, the transaction fees right now are $138 for the miner's fee. Oh, it's really frustrating. If it keeps up like that, some of the other competition's just going to catch up by default, because that's unacceptable. I can't sell without paying $138 to the miners. Come on now. EIP 1559 did nothing. Anyway, so that's the problem. Now we've got the crypto regulation bill tied into the infrastructure bill. And you know how hard it is to get people, in the Senate and whatnot to agree on passing multi-trillion-dollar bills. Just like what happened with the stimulus, how it kept going back and forth, and rejection from the Republicans, rejection from the Democrats, and back and forth, and back and forth, and back and forth. None of them really ever agree. It takes forever to come to an agreement. So, of course, that was happening kind of today, but then it got, we have the crypto regulations portion tacked in there for whatever reason. And so they got to that portion. And basically what ended up happening was you had a couple, obviously technical literate senators come up and started pleading the case, saying the way this regulation was originally put together, it's obvious that it made no sense. It's obvious that it wasn't well thought out. We're trying to put in law that people that have nothing to do with the actual transaction handling or anything should be viewed as brokers and provide transaction reports back to the government. So you know how your exchange ends up reporting each buy and sell that you do and everything, and when you get your tax form, you can see all those listed. They're basically saying in the regulation, the original proposal, that people that develop blockchain software, so developers and miners, should also be classified as brokers. So if I decided to build a DeFi app, I should be responsible, just as a developer, for reporting your transactions through my app back. Not only that, and just as a developer, I'm not saying as the program, just as a blockchain developer. On top of that, if I'm a miner or just a validator, so that means if you are on a proof of stake network and you are a validator because you've staked, since you're authorizing transactions, the government's expecting you to provide a transaction report. When you know you have no hands-on and all your computer's doing is running in the background doing these calculations and stuff. So it just didn't, it doesn't make sense. And so that's why the Senate was like, come on, we know this doesn't make sense. We know this was put together kind of hastily, not well thought out. The verbiage here could single-handedly end cryptocurrency. And not only that, not just end the crypto bull run or whatever, but it can destroy billions of dollars worth of people's livelihood in the US, as they're no longer allowed to really interact with crypto, because that means you can't be a validator on a network anymore, because it's impossible to report transactions. So by US regulation, if you're a validator and you're required to be, if you're a validator, report transactions, and you can't report any transactions because it's not possible, you can't be a validator, or else you're breaking the law. It's like saying you can't own a home unless you can fly. It's like, well, humans can't fly. Well, guess you can't own a house. You know, it just doesn't, it's not possible. It doesn't make sense. So
that is a complication, right? Particularly when you're looking at as an outsider. Everyone says this is an area that needs to be more heavily regulated, that regulations are not keeping up with the technology, but its very nature does it make it very difficult for lawmakers, for policymakers to be able to keep up.
Absolutely. So you're seeing at this level, it looks like an infrastructure bill. It's a piece of legislation that's dealing with roads and bridges, but now we're moving into a world where we're pulling digital infrastructure into that infrastructure matrix. The reason that's particularly concerning when it comes to these new asset classes of digital tokens is there's three primary concerns. One is around custody. So when we move to digital assets, they do not have the same ability for people who control those platforms to be able to moderate or report on what's happening inside their platforms, which is why you're getting a lot of pushback on the infrastructure bill from potential miners or cryptocurrency exchanges or DeFi platforms. They can't actually see what's going on. This is a part of a much broader concern that people should be looking at, which is that we are basically moving management of money and assets to code. So if code is picking up the baby, so to speak, then we need to be able to actually look at not just the people who set up these organizations, but we need to be able to look at the code and the integrity of the code itself.
Right. So how would that compare with having more laws and regulations here in the US with the rest of the world as well, given that cryptocurrencies really have no borders?
It's a problem everywhere. There's no country that's particularly nailed cryptocurrency regulation, and that's because we don't really know what these things are yet. What we could say are that they are digital twins of things that are happening in the real world. So that means they could be a legal contract. That means they could be a digital twin of how a car is running. That means they could be a non-fungible token, which is representing a piece of art. What we do know is they're not just money. We do know that they're not just commodities, although some are regulated as commodities, as you've seen with Bitcoin. So some places which are doing it interestingly and probably in a leading way is Liechtenstein. You've got FINMA as the regulator in Switzerland who's taking a new approach. And I would say you've got some leadership coming out of Singapore and the MIS, their securities regulator. But we don't know what these things are. And the primary reason is because they change over time. So they are assets that evolve. That's a new thing for the world to see.
Given that, do we need a global institution in order to be able to play regulatory catch-up?
Well, I think that we're leading that way. It's just we don't know what the actual regulator should be. For example, we have things like FATFA. We have things which are like you have the Bank of International Settlements. Those are where we have particular industries getting together. But because these cross sectors and industries, it's not clear exactly who that regulator should be. But what we do know is just looking down one parallel, for example, trying to sort out corporations law or trying to sort out IRS tax law, exactly as you see in this infrastructure bill, it looks like it's about infrastructure, but it has an implication on custody and brokerage for tokens. And that's a surprising thing. But we're going to see that more and more in every piece of legislation. It looks like it's about infrastructure, but it has an implication on custody and brokerage for tokens. And that's a surprising thing. But we're going to see that more and more in every piece of legislation.
Natasha, do you think the environmental aspect of the negativity that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining has attracted as a result of just how much environmentally unsound energy consumption it uses, do you think that's a solvable problem? Because that feels like another kind of policy intersection where so far we've kind of seen more, I suppose, either a hardline stance coming from governments or just an inability to make any decisions.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say is a blockchain is not a blockchain, is not a blockchain. So the blockchains we're familiar with are called public permissionless blockchains, like your big ones like Ethereum and Bitcoin. What we're going to see happening next, and we will see the rise of private permissioned distributed ledger technology based infrastructure, critical infrastructure, sovereign infrastructure for each country, where they will need to have data security, cyber security, legal certainty, and the ability for people to use that infrastructure. So same as we've had payment rails, we've taken good attention to our digitization of money. We're going to start needing to see better public infrastructure that has a public interest component going forward. But they will be using the underlying technology of blockchain, which is distributed ledger technology. But it doesn't have that energy requirement.
Right. John, we do, actually. The new infrastructure bill raises an estimated $28 billion from cracking down on crypto tax evasion. But for investors who do pay their taxes, there is a potential upside. Now, to comply with the new rules, crypto exchanges like Coinbase or Binance will have to start producing tax forms known as 1099-Bs. So rather than having to calculate their own taxes, crypto holders will get an easy-to-read form that's also sent to the IRS. Now, in some cases, the rules could even help lower taxes. Crypto holders who use tax loss harvesting, that's where you take losses on money-losing crypto positions to offset gains, they will have much clearer records that right now, if you move crypto from one exchange to another, the exchanges don't provide any information on your cost basis. So that makes it a lot harder to track losses. The new rules will provide a detailed history of each crypto purchase or sale, even if you transfer the tokens. Bottom line here, the new rules will tell the government who is avoiding crypto taxes, but it could also help those who play by the rules. Imagine that, John, a tax code that rewards those who play by the rules.
I'll believe it when I see it, Robert Frank. Does it reward them as much as those who kind of play by the letter of the rules but manage to find some loopholes? And it also seems like there's some opportunity here both for specialists to deal with the ultra-rich around crypto issues and maybe even for software. I don't know if you're hearing anything about that.
No question. I mean, there's a whole new cottage industry that's cropped up just in the last year, and I talked to a lot of them for this particular reporting, of tax advisors to crypto holders because it's complicated. As Gensler just said, the rules are a little amorphous right now. It's kind of the Wild West. So there is a brand new thriving business around taxes and crypto and investing.
Yeah, that's who wins no matter what. The people who are prepared to specialize in helping you pay as little as possible in the new thing. Robert, thanks.